Shalom, welcome to Erev Israel. This is Avraham Shira for our daily Erev Shabbat talk. We've got an interesting subject today. The parshat Vayikhel, Moshe gathered in the people. Why do we gather? The question I was asking myself as I was looking at this parsha and what the Zohar talks about. And as usual, the Zohar takes us to a very broad, wide-angle lens of experience and reality of the Jews from the whole biblical story, and then it's our job to extrapolate the meaning from the ancient story and apply it to the present story. So in the ancient story, Moses gathered the people after the sin of the golden calf. And the idea, the Zohar tells us, was to cause a separation in the Am, to cause a separation in the people between those who had been touched by the golden calf and those who had not. Now you say, wait a minute, Moses took all the golden calf, he ground it into dust, he mixed it with water, he made the people drink, the Midrash says. The people who turned green from drinking that golden cocktail, they were the ones who were actually part of the making and the celebration of the golden calf, and they passed away. How they passed away is not a pretty picture. We're not going to go there now. But there were 3.2 million people in the camp, give or take, and each person had their own relationship to that event. Some were, of course, get me away from here. And some were what's going on? And some were like, why are they doing what they're doing? And some were going like, wow, it sounds like they're having fun. They got this new golden calf, they're dancing, they're singing, there's smoke going, there's fire going, there's lots of wine flowing, and, a little bit of dancing, and who knows what else. So each person had his connection to the event. And the connection that we have to an event depends on that spark that's in us that corresponds to that. So if I was excited because they were dancing to the golden calf, that means I have a spark of, maybe I have a spark of dance in me that wants to celebrate. And instead of dancing to God, let's go dance with my friends and see what they're dancing about. And same thing with drinking wine, and the same thing with all the other activities that go on in any heavy-duty dance club or a celebration of such sorts. Okay. So, but each person gets touched by what we call in Kabbalah the klipa of the event. And depending on our being touched by that external force, so too will be our relation to it, and so too will be its influence on us. Understand that clearly. Now, there are those Jews that were far away from the whole action, and they weren't even touched by it. They're considered the holiest because they had no connection to serving idols and the rest of the party activity. And then each person according to his level. So Moses brought the people together, and the Zohar says, in order to clarify and separate the people who were really holy and putting Hashem first in all things, and that creates distinctions or separations between the levels of the people. Now, is that bad? To create distinctions and separations? Most people in a modern collective society would say, we don't want to make differentiations between people. But in the sense of Kedusha, it's necessary. Because one person likes to go and party with these people and the other person doesn't. They can't hang out together. Or they can. But then you become influenced. A person becomes influenced by his friends. You'll end up like your friends if you don't change your friends. Remember that one. And so the Zohar is saying that Moshe Rabbeinu took the people and brought them together and gathered them in order that they could separate them from the post-golden calf trauma. To see who's here and who's what and what connection I had to it. So it helps us understand a little bit more about this idea of gathering, right? But nowadays, ask ourselves the same question. Why do we gather? Well, one reason, of course, is celebration. A guy puts out a new album, it's beautiful music. he makes a concert. Everybody gathers to the concert to hear the music, to receive inspiration, joy, whatever it might be that he gets from the musical concert. Maybe to praise the artist, maybe to be part of the dancing in the middle. I don't know. Depends. The type of music, whatever. Doesn't matter. The idea there is celebration and joy of artistic, creative expression. That's a good thing in general. Okay, some people gather because the politician is called, an event, a committee, a gathering, a conference. We have to re-strengthen, focus, and identify ourselves. So what's going on? Well, usually when politicians are gathering people, of course, they're trying to muster koach. They're mustering power. They're trying to empower themselves with others. And if those others identify with that leader and his agenda, then they too will receive empowerment from that event. And also with that goes along with it is clarity, purpose, direction. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm Likud. I'm, whatever tribe or party you are, right? The gathering of the tribe or the party in this context is for power. We need to empower ourselves, re-identify ourselves, re-clarify why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going with it. That's another reason why people gather. Of course, then there's another type of gathering. Why we gather is the protest gathering, where people want change. People are fed up. People want to see something different happen. And, I once, I have sometimes little business to do with the local Muslims, the local Arabs here in Eretz Israel. And I've asked them once about their government versus our government. And they said, well, at least you guys can protest. We can't protest. If we protest, we'll get a knock on the door in the middle of the night. So I'm saying to myself, well, that's interesting. We're allowed to protest, but how much actually gets accomplished from the protests? I'm not sure. That would be an interesting study. But the point here is that when the people gather together, they want change. And it gives them a sense of empowerment to cause change when there's a lot of people together. So again, we see this idea of power. So there's the power of joy and celebration. There's the power of political commitment and motivation. And then there's the power of protest, which is to really change the past and what's happened before to make it a potential for something better. But deeper than all of these gatherings, there's another gathering that we're hopefully aware of. It's the reason we go to the Beit Knesset. It's the reason we go to the Western Wall. It's the reason we go to other great events like Lag BaOmer and Meron. And that is because when you gather Jews together, you're experiencing a greater concentration of divine presence. Each person has his own spark. Not all the sparks are the same. Obviously not. None are the same, actually. Each person has a different spark of the eternal. But when you bring them all together, they're kind of like bind together and get exponentially more powerful. So that even if you don't feel like praying or you don't have strength to pray, if you go to the synagogue and sit with the other people while they pray, your soul will still be aroused. And even if you still don't want to go to a big gathering of thousands of people at Lag BaOmer singing and dancing and learning Zohar, just by being there, your soul is swept upward with the action of the other souls who are involved. So we gather because that's where there's a greater revelation of the divine presence. Now, on a side note, which is not really a side note because it is Erev Shabbat, is Shabbat itself is the gathering of the week. Right? We gather in all the good deeds and maybe a few not so good deeds. And we gather in all our feelings and all our thoughts and perceptions. All of them come together into Shabbat. Now, you might not see it, you might not feel it, you might not think it, but it's happening. Because on Shabbat, we get a new soul. You know, think of it not like a new soul, but I get an add-on soul. I get a little download up here for the Shabbat, and then it leaves Saturday night sometime, depending on what I'm up to, right? And so each Shabbat is an ingathering of the week and of our personal lives. And so when we gather together, those sparks of ourselves, we are more empowered. And when we're honest about it, we're more in truth. And when you're in truth, Hashem Elokeichem Emet, God is truth. Ultimate truth, a capital T, right? Emet. And so truth itself is, of course, this hugely debated topic amongst the world of philosophers and maybe some armchair philosophers and barstool philosophers. You know, there's plenty of them out there, right? But regardless of how people perceive emet, Judaism says, just like the divine presence, there is God's truth, which is the ultimate truth, and then every person has his little truth wherever he is in his life, in his relationship to everything else. And so what we want to do is gather those sparks of our truth during the week and our highs and lows and bring them all back to Hashem on Shabbat, because Shabbat gathers them in and they're lifted up and all the good deeds are brought up to that bank account in the sky, you know, and the negative deeds have to be dealt with, of course, the way we do, which is to apologize and to recommit ourselves to doing the right things. And when we do that, you know, Shabbat takes off. Shabbat becomes this very special day of Teshuvah, because Shuvah is the letters of Shabbat. So we see that these concepts, it's all about this expansion and then return. Expansion and return, whether it's the days of the week, the weeks of the year, the months of the year, the 7-year cycles. We are now in the end of the 7th year. Next year will be a Shemitah year. Excuse me, well, we're really the end of the 6th year. Beginning the 7th year will be a Shemitah year. So we've gathered in 6 years of crops. Now we're going to let the land go fallow for a year and regather its own power. So you see, we're always in this shift of this expansion and contraction of receiving power and giving it out, receiving new power, giving it out. And all creation is operating on these same principles. And that gives unity to our vision and our perception. So I want to bless you all with that unified vision, to see yourself as part of the group, any group, whether it's just the Jewish people or the race called the humanity, right? Whatever group you identify with, that you get power from your group, not to be like everybody else though. Power from you, the group, to be more of who you really are. And then we perform the mitzvah of being true to ourselves, and then we get to have a more intimate relationship with God, because it's very hard to face God if we're not true about ourselves. So we should be blessed with that insight and that living, that space, and Shabbat should give us the strength to bring in the week and start a new one with new focus and purpose and direction. God bless you all. We'll see you next week on all the outlets. And they tell me I should tell you to like and send and share and, I don't know, put some hearts up on the screen. It seems a little bit strange, but you'll do what you have to do. God bless you all. Shabbat shalom.